Hello everyone. Welcome to Ludo History, and uh, welcome to Survival Fountain of Youth. I am not doing this alone today. I am joined by my good friend Sacerdos, a longtime community member, and a specialist in this stuff. Sacerdos, if you want to say hi.
Hello everyone, so excited to be back on the stream. And it looks like a very interesting experience today. Lot to say on this.
There's going to be a lot to say, and interesting might be an understatement here. So, Spaceborb, this dude, JCDC, Terralingua, and everyone, Rat. Good to see everyone. Let's just get into it, because oh boy, I booted up this game about an hour ago for the first time to get an immediate sense of, how the controls work so I'm not flailing uselessly, and oh man, is this going to be a great time. So, oh, there's so much happening.
Yeah, I haven't seen anything but the trailer.
Oh,
So,
yeah. Yeah.
I'm gonna have live reactions to everything that's happening here.
True. It's going to be a great time. And by great, I mean someone is going to suffer, whether it's you, me, or all of us. It remains to be seen. For anyone who does not know, this game, Survival Fountain of Youth, is set in a specific historical moment, 1514, on the first expedition of Juan Ponce de Leon to, well, Florida. The expedition goes questionably, and according to the game, not according to real life, but according to the game, the ships get shipwrecked on the game's island, and you have to survive, because, oh boy.
Short note, that didn't happen.
True. Sounds like there was a lot of misadventures on that expedition, but the shipwreck in particular did not happen.
Did you say 1514?
I think that's what they said. I might be wrong on this though.
Someone's wrong because it was 1513.
Well,
1514, Ponce de Leon was already back in Spain, telling everybody about his great trip and asking for more money and more support to fund the second expedition, which would, however, take 8 years until it manifested in 1521.
Right.
And then he died on that one.
well, unlucky. We'll see how much they conflate the two expeditions, because I'm guessing they're going to do so at least a little bit. So, I think, maybe we should just hop straight on into it, because there's a lot of game to get through. We're just gonna see a very little bit of it. But, before we do that, of course, some announcements. If you do like the stream and are just tuning in, do make sure you say hello and consider dropping a follow to be notified. This channel specializes in historical games and loves getting guests with all of their incredible expertise on, in order to really enrich that experience. So if you like that concept and like a wide array of history and history adjacent games, consider dropping a follow to help support us. And if you really like it, do consider subscribing or heading over to Patreon in order to help keep the channel running, and help keep us doing more and bigger projects. As I said, right, as you've heard, today we do have a guest who specializes in early modern colonialism and specifically on the Spanish Empire. So we're digging right into the heart of someone's expertise here, and it is going to be a very interesting time. Alright, so without further ado, let's hop into Survival Fountain of Youth. New game. Skip intro and tutorial. No. Max number of feints. Infinite, please. I'm not good at survival games. Hard, normal, easy. Okay. We'll just keep everything on normal, and we'll get going. Lady Isabel, the bar is being better than New World, then the bar is below the ground. That's true.
Is inspired by real events. According to historic records, on March 4th, 1513,
Okay, so I was the one who was wrong there.
Puerto Rico. They were heading to faraway islands and were led by the famous explorer Juan Ponce de Leon. The goal of the expedition was to search for the legendary Fountain of Youth.
So maybe before we get started on all of that, maybe... Oh, sorry, they're still talking.
Oh, there's so much talking to happen yet.
In a war against other tribes, the Spanish soldiers quickly ended the war and restored peace.
Oh, God. Oh.
The chief told Ponce de Leon an ancient legend of his people, a legend about Bimini, a hidden island lost in the sea. According to the legend, in the center of Bimini is the Fountain of Youth. Anyone who drinks from it will enjoy long years of health and youth. The chief also gave him an old map, covered with inscriptions in an ancient language. The map showed an uncharted group of islands. The location to search was clear, but the inscriptions were still a mystery to uncover. The captain believed in the legend and began to prepare an expedition. The best scientists and sailors of the New and Old Worlds volunteered.
Oh, no.
His adventure.
Oh, no.
A total of 3 ships sailed off: the Santiago, the Santa Maria.
Well, they got one thing right.
Cristobal. Ponce de Leon was sure that the ancient map would lead them to the fountain and bring them fame, wealth, and eternal youth. The voyage to the islands took an entire month. On the 30th day of the journey, the lookout spotted islands up ahead. They were the islands from the map. The expedition was just 1 day from its goal.
All right. Well,
So, do you have like half an hour for me to unpack this?
well,
No, but-
we've got at least a few minutes. So, firstly, thank you, Leander, for 31 months of Prime Sub, and thank you, Heather Soren, for the follow just now. So, where do you want to start?
I think the first thing to say really is who is Ponce de Leon? I think that helps us ground all of this a bit in reality.
Agreed.
We got some details already that help us explore his biography. So he starts from Puerto Rico. Why does he start from Puerto Rico? So how did Juan Ponce de Leon even get to the Caribbean, to the Spanish colonies there? So we actually know relatively little about him. We don't know who his parents were. We don't know when exactly he was born. It was sometime between 1460 and 1470, which is really interesting because Ponce de Leon is one of the most important noble families in Spain at the time. He is from very, very high-ranking nobility. They are the leading family in the city of Seville, which is the only city that is allowed to trade with the colonies in the Americas. And so they have enormous wealth in very direct access to all this trade. But we know very little about Ponce de Leon's origins. So a lot of scholars have speculated that he may have been an illegitimate son of one of the Ponce de Leon family members. So he was possibly a bastard in the language of the time and not a legitimate son of this noble family, which may explain why he goes into a business a little grittier than what most nobles of the time do. He joins the second voyage of Columbus and he arrives in the Caribbean in 1493. And then we don't hear from him for a decade. He's apparently just quietly working in the administration, and the colony starts rising through the ranks. And then in 1508, he's the guy who suggests, hey, why don't we colonize Puerto Rico?
Yay!
Yes, totally great. So he got news that there's gold mines on Puerto Rico to exploit, and he gets the royal patent to do so, and becomes the first governor of Puerto Rico. He takes the island initially peacefully because he makes arrangements with the most influential indigenous ruler on the island, who is called Aguebana. And that's where they made a major mistake, because they said that the one he got along so well with was Guebana. But that's wrong. He made an alliance with Aguebana, and when Aguebana died, his brother Guebana succeeded him and immediately started a rebellion against Ponce de Leon. So
Well,
he was not a fan of the Spanish. Yeah. So if he's already governor of Puerto Rico, why does he have to go exploring further? Why is that not enough? For that, we have to look at what was happening with Columbus, actually. So most intelligent people today, I think, hate Columbus. But what few people realize is that a lot of people back then also hated Columbus, and not for the whole colonizing and slave trading business, but because he was a pretty shit administrator in his job as governor in the Caribbean, and also because he was a commoner, and people did not like taking orders from a commoner when there were nobility around. So the crown tried to take the governorship away from Columbus, and Columbus died basically destitute, and so his son Diego sued the crown in court. He went to court and sued the crown over the governorship. And they actually won in the first instance, which is really interesting for me. That's hard for us to imagine. We imagine kings and queens back then as all powerful. Nobody could contradict them. But actually, the Columbus family won the lawsuit in the first instance, and Columbus's son Diego got full power in the Caribbean for a few years, and he removed all the officials that had been put into place by the crown, including Ponce de Leon. So he was out of a job. So he was looking for greener pastures, and that is why he made his way to look for Bimini, which is an island group probably in the Bahamas.
Yeah.
And he did not look for the Fountain of Youth. So we have few documents from Ponce de Leon's own time. We have his petitions to the crown, where he asks for permission to go on this journey. And they do not mention a Fountain of Youth. And you'd think that that would be a pretty major thing to mention if you're trying to get funding for your journey. Oh yeah, I might discover the Fountain of Youth on the way. He doesn't mention that, and neither do the chroniclers who live in his time. The first time the legend is brought up is 20 years after his death in the Chronicle of Fernandez de Oviedo, who appears to hate Ponce de Leon's guts, because he jokes that the waters that Ponce de Leon drank didn't grant him eternal youth, but just messed up his brain, so that he believed this nonsense. He also says that Ponce de Leon was only looking for the fountain because he was impotent and hoping to be healed by the waters. So it's a real character assassination that first brings up this legend.
Yeah.
But it stays attached to his story for 500 years after. It's still widely believed, even by historians who don't specialize in this stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's how this whole story of the Fountain of Youth comes about. It's almost certainly not an indigenous story, because it's just the same story that already appears in the Middle Ages in the Alexander romance.
Oh yeah, it super is. Duh. I can't believe I didn't put that together. Wow. I feel real dumb about that.
Wow. But yeah, they were all. I think we talked about this in the New World stream where I was a guest. That many of the things that the Spanish explorers were looking for in the Americas were things they had heard of in novels of chivalry. California is named after an Amazon queen from a chivalric romance, and the Fountain of Youth as well is a story about Alexander, who sent out his cook to look for water to cook for him. And the cook finds a Fountain of Youth and notices that the water revives the dead fish he's trying to cook in it. So he drinks it, and he seduces Alexander's daughter by offering her the water as well. And Alexander is so angry that he has both of them tied to a millstone and thrown in the sea. So now they live eternally on the seafloor.
Yep.
But that's I don't think there's any evidence that Ponce de Leon himself was looking for that thing. That gets attached to his name later.
That makes sense. So, I think we'll have plenty of time to talk more about the Fountain of Youth, and its, lack of origins later. But I do want to quickly turn to this map that I've been staring at, because we're not going to get another chance to look at it before it gets yoinked. And yikes. Like, I don't know. None of this makes sense to me.
So, feather decorations. You know something is Native American
Because, of course.
when there's feathers attached, right?
Of course. I'm more looking, at this block of symbols.
So
Those look like some quality Inca tech happening right here.
it might be supposed to look like Maya hieroglyphs. That's possible that they're intending for that. I mean, I'm also not seeing them very much up close.
Yeah, I unfortunately don't have a zoom in button, which is dumb. Every game should have a let me just zoom in on an object button.
Yeah.
Let me see if there's actually a control for that. Key bindings.
Like I said, probably no basis in indigenous stories, this Fountain of Youth, but the idea of an indigenous map is interesting. We don't really know of indigenous maps from before the conquest, but after the conquest, indigenous people started painting a lot of maps because they were part of, again, lawsuits.
Yeah.
So because indigenous nations had their own nobility, and because, as I mentioned, hierarchies and nobility were very important to the Spanish conception of society at that time, the crown tried to protect the rights of the indigenous nobility to a certain degree. So they painted maps of this used to be my territory, and this and that person is taking away this farmland that I used to own, and so on. So actually you do have, in the 16th century, a number of maps painted by indigenous American people.
That makes good sense to me. I think, right. Interpreting this in terms of indigenous maps, and more broadly codices, I think, makes a lot of sense. Anyway, we've been ranking, there's been a fair bit of ranking on, the fundamental premise of the game here, but I do want to highlight a couple of things I've seen that I actually do like. the first one that I saw in the documents here, right, the idea that there's just, like, a written note that's a last will and testament, the idea that's, like, wandering around instead of being left in someone's care is weird, but also, like, immediately the sailor having basically nothing, and yet yielding that to the church with the captain as the executor, I actually don't hate. Like, a nice bit of humanizing in the sort of documents that we get a lot of.
You could polish it a little bit more with a few more details from actual wills from the time. Like, almost certainly someone would ask that part of the inheritance be used to pay for masses to be said in their name in the church. But otherwise, yeah, it's a great idea, and it shows the worries people at the time had and how they dealt with them.
Also, it's already better church representation than New World got, and, you know, we take that. Oh yeah, by the way, you were saying that those might be, like, Mayan, sort of pictographs?
Yeah, this is definitely Maya inspired. It makes zero sense to have, like, one huge glyph on a vessel, but it's definitely inspired by Maya glyphs. And because for this dude just asked, I know so little about ships. I can't even remember, like, basic types of ships, like frigates and whatever the rest are called. So I really can't comment on how accurate the ship is. I'm sorry.
Yeah. The vibes feel right, and the idea that there's not enough space for everyone, for the entire crew to be sleeping, so they're just kind of wherever they can fit, also feels right. But past that, yeah. Oh hey, found of the natives' culture. They would have more specificity than this, right? Like, documentation from the...
No. They very often, like, there are entire regions where we don't know a single name of a single nation because they always just say Indios. So actually, natives is kind of like too modern, too neutral. He would say Indios.
Okay.
And culture is also not really a 16th century word, but that's nitpicking. But yeah, you very rarely get specific ethnonyms, at least in, like, these conquest reports. Missionaries who, like, compile these huge encyclopedias, they're more likely to give you details like that. But the conquerors, usually, to them, it's all Indios. They're all the same.
Wait, I know this map. This is an archival map. If I could stop, like, wiggling, that would be lovely. We've got a beautiful portal chart here.
Yeah.
Ooh, with our favorite horrible, absolutely horrible, capital letters. Man, I'm gonna turn up the screen brightness so we can actually get a look at this. Brightness. Literally all the way up. That changed nothing.
Sure they really just put actual maps in there.
They just fully put historical maps in there. I love it.
That's great. I didn't mean that in a deprecating manner. That's a great detail to use because there are so many beautiful maps from that period. And yeah, I think it shows that they don't know the South American coast entirely yet. There's a lot of details missing.
My guy desperately needs to stop wiggling so I can actually look at this. This one looks like it's supposed to be a map of Brazil.
Could be.
On the bottom it says Brasilia Pars.
Oh, great. And it has some little
it's in Dutch.
indigenous people painted it. That would be wrong.
It's in the top corner it says Noiva, and then I can't read the next word. So the top text box is in Dutch.
That could, like, be from like the Spanish Netherlands or something.
Yeah.
Or like the big Dutch map making that comes in the 17th century after after Dutch independence. But yeah, there definitely were important map makers in Antwerp around this time. But I
Yeah,
think they mostly have the legends in Latin. I think I'm not an expert on maps though.
yeah. This looks to me like it's probably like a mid 1600s map, but that in terms of the things to criticize, that is so small. I'm not even worried about
No,
it.
no, no. I'm not going to criticize that. Not at all.
The
And
ooh, this is
no, for this dude, this is after Vespucci. Vespucci died 1512, and we're 1513.
yeah. This is also the map underneath the book and the teapot here. The Latin legend is Totius Orbis Cogniti Universalis Descriptio. So, is that sounds an awful lot like Ortelius's atlas. But there's a whole bunch of world maps from this
Yeah,
period.
I,
Oh,
I'm not a
that's
map
all of
expert.
North America. This is later.
Yeah, this must be later then. They had barely any idea about North America at this point. Like when Ponce de Leon reached Florida, they believed that Florida was an island.
Fair
Um,
enough.
it
So,
it took them quite a bit longer until they realized it was just a peninsula of an entire continent.
yeah. So really, it's like this portal chart is the one that strikes me as like early 16th century,
That could work out, yeah.
and these both strike me as like mid 17th into early 18th century.
I think 18th might be too late for. I mean, we don't see a lot of the one that's covered.
Exactly.
But for the others, I think 18th is too late, because in the 18th you get less and less of these little people painted in and things like that.
That's
So
true.
that still strikes me as a 16th century, I think.
Yeah,
But
potentially.
yeah, this table is
I'm
actually
loving
just
this table.
brimming with historical detail, and it does show they put some thought into it.
Yeah, and I love the little teapot we've got there as well. Like that is a lovely piece of enameled metalwork, with potentially imported either from the Mediterranean or from India.
Good question.
There's several options here, but the museum I work at has several things that are potentially like good analogs to this. So like, there's just a lot to like about this room in particular. I'm actually a big fan. Except for these books. These books are goofy. This is apparently the expedition logbook, and if you put this much effort into a leather stamped gilded cover for a
Yeah.
logbook, want to have words. And also, this is a 20th century conservation binding.
At the same time, would you like notice it and go to it, or if it didn't look like that? It helps you spot it. I
It does.
guess. So I'm not gonna detract points for that.
Agreed. Another great thing. The crew of the Santa Maria is on strike again. This time, the team did not agree with the captain's decision to have their weekly portion of rub. The head of the expedition, Ponce de Leon, had to cross from our ship, the Santiago, to the Santa Maria to calm the crew once again. Fantastic.
There was no rum at this time.
Fair. But the idea that they just go on strike,
That's a nice detail, because Columbus too had that problem. When he was just off the coast of Africa, beginning to go west, the crew got nervous and almost mutinied. So not unrealistic at all here.
yeah, that it's another case where they're clearly putting a fair amount of work into this, and then they throw it all away by immediately saying scientists deciphering
Yeah.
the map.
That already struck me in the intro. It's so weird.
It's such a-
that's a very obvious thing. Like, even in the popular conception of the time, it's not even like a popular myth or anything. Scientists just that doesn't exist.
Exactly. It's peculiar. I genuinely don't understand because, you'd have either potentially indigenous people who are doing the translation work, right? You can just. If you have Taino, like, things written in, I guess, a transliteration of the Taino language, you could just have someone who speaks Taino. They may not be voluntarily on the expedition, but you could do it.
Oh, totally.
You could have
Totally.
a clergy who is multilingual on the expedition. That happens. There's so many options other than scientists. Also, since when, I mean, this is my humanities centrism showing. But if you're going to try and do linguistic work, hire a humanities person, not a capitalist scientist.
Scholars would have worked, actually. A word like scholars would
Yeah.
have worked.
Yeah.
So that's an interesting choice. In general, what we've seen so far, it mixes an impressive eye for detail with just weirdly modern language. It almost feels like a bad translation of something that was originally written in another language, you know?
I agree with that.
Is the game originally in English, yeah?
I believe so. I'm not super sure on that, but I believe so. Also, they referenced the strange little guy that we stabbed with a sword earlier.
Yeah, I talked over that. I'm so sorry, because
all right.
that was actually big heroic moment for you, stabbing a squirrel thing.
The famous Floridian Wolverine. And I swear, that is the only, like, reference I jump to, is either that some sort of, crap. What are the weird... what is it? There's, like, a Madagascan,
Oh, Fossas?
Yeah, right? It kind of looks like a fossa with a too bushy tail, and it kind of looks like a Wolverine, but 2,000 miles out of territory.
Yeah.
Anyway, the other reference here that I think is another case of, at least they've, like, done cursory research, the San Cristobal gets carried away by the current.
Oh yeah, that is actually a thing they had a problem with around Florida because of the Gulf Stream.
Yeah.
That was an actual problem the Ponce de Leon expedition faced.
Exactly. So, then we've got, that tells us, right, we're actually relatively late in the expedition.
Yeah, it was in September, I think, September 1513, that they got back to Puerto Rico.
Exactly. So, and in the cursory research I did beforehand, it looked like they got stranded on Cuba for a brief second because they got lost. But I will not hold to that because I don't actually know.
Well, they should have visited Florida in March, because that's why it's called Florida. Because they sighted land on Easter, and the popular name for Easter at the time was Pascua Florida, the flowery Passover. So that's how the peninsula got its name.
This is fine.
Yeah.
This is fine.
Bit of fire, never hurt anyone.
Exactly. God. Another thing they're doing super right. Well, this sketch feels like weirdly naturalistic. The scribble hand here is just awful, and I love it.
Yeah, although it's more late 16th or 17th century. Early 16th you would barely recognize as letters.
True.
Early 16th is horrible, and I refuse to deal with it.
Shame that you're doing, a doctorate in that has to deal with it regularly.
That's why I focus on slightly later periods. Early 16th century handwriting, I didn't know how people deal. I stay away from that.
That's fair. Okay, so we need to decide what we're going to take with us, because we can only take two things.
Oh, that's a cool gimmick. I love that.
Yeah. So we can take a backpack, a coat, flint and steel, an improved fishing rod, a nearly broken spear, an iron axe, a very nice knife, a bag of provisions, a pistol, or a bag of medicine. So what are we taking?
I hope you're not asking me.
I mean, I think we're taking the backpack, because a survival game without a backpack is just infuriating.
Yeah.
And then... Knife? Chad seems to want the knife, so let's grab that knife.
And Isabel, that is the Cross of Santiago. So first off, Spain had a whole lot of knightly orders of its own for its wars against the Muslim population or the Muslim kingdoms on the Iberian Peninsula. And with the fall of Granada in 1492, they became kind of obsolete. So a lot of them were involved in colonial matters. Again, people looking for greener pastures.
Girl, I desperately wish I could zoom in on this. Dang it. It's so tempting. I can almost identify it.
Yeah, but that is completely off for this period. Like you have the entire western coast of North America and South America. No, they were barely just figuring out that there were continents there and not just islands.
They also have Antarctica.
More likely,
I mean, Terra Australis.
Antarctica, more like Terra Incognita Australis.
Yeah. See, I would agree with you, except that looks suspiciously like it matches, like, at least some of the capes, like Cape Ross or whatever.
You see, Australia is part of,
Yeah.
of that whole line, and so is the southern tip of South America.
You're right.
So it's some kind of terra incognita.
Yeah. But hey, Southeast Asia is fully represented as a massive island, so we love that.
Yeah,
Also, Japan?
yeah. Also a bit too.
I'm confused as to when this map is from, but I do still believe that it is actually a historical map.
No, that for sure.
Yeah.
That's for sure. But it's too late for where we are.
Yep,
In
but hey, that's fine.
Yeah, European contact with Japan is 1543, so that's 30 years later.
Yeah. Anyway, rest in peace, Santiago. You had a very nice captain's room.
KJ, you're absolutely right. To really understand the conquest of the Americas, you have to look at the Middle Ages in Spain, and you have to look at the war going on between the Christian kingdoms of the Iberian Peninsula and the Islamic kingdoms. And basically this whole ideology, this right to conquest, all of that comes from that long religious conflict.
Yeah. We'll return to that while I'm running around with the tutorial, but in the meantime, someone should tag math for classic amnesia plotlines. Oh, trauma, we now have amnesia. Definitely how brains work. Oh dear.
Actually, most Spanish medievalists have abandoned the term reconquista. They just call it conquista or Christian conquest now, because the again, it kind of implies that it was the Christians' land all along. It belonged to them, and they were just retaking it from people who were illegally occupying it, and that's just not a very helpful historical perspective.
Solidly. Right, because the continuity between the Visigothic kingdoms of the 7th and early 8th centuries and, Castilian is, and Aragon is non-existent.
Yeah, pretty much, pretty much. But it definitely in the 16th century, everyone loves to claim descent from the Goths. It's kind of the opposite of having Jewish ancestors, because you have this intense anti-Semitism in the period, and even just having like some remote Jewish ancestor can hugely impact your life. And so people focus on like a Gothic heritage instead.
Nailed it. Oh boy.
Abercrombie. But we are probably, from everything we've read in the log, we're probably not even in Florida.
Oh.
We're probably somewhere in the Bahamas instead.
Agreed. Especially since the timing is just wrong, right? If they were in Florida around Easter, well, we are at like the end of May, start of June, so
Yeah, so we're probably somewhere in the Bahamas, which is fair because, like I said, no one was actually looking for the Fountain of Youth, so it can be wherever. It only becomes associated with Ponce de Leon and with the Florida Peninsula later. So let's just put it wherever. Actually, the earliest mention of the Fountain of Youth in the Americas is associated with the Bay of Honduras. Like one chronicler mentions rumors of a Fountain of Youth on an island in the Bay of Honduras. So yeah, just put the Fountain of Youth wherever it suits you. It's bullshit either way.
I love it. Yay, we slept. And now we gotta do a bunch of survival game stuff while looking at the rock formations. Uh-huh. Yep.
Will the rock formations try to kill us?
If we jump off them, I'm sure they will. Also, Raptorus, if you're still around, this one's for you. Look at the name of this tree. Well, I am not a botanist. It's behind the chapa. Oh, pterodon. Well, you know, I am not a botanist, and there might be trees that are called that. It does say pterodon, so my expectations are not existent.
So Wikipedia tells me it's a kind of legume.
Right. Okay.
Has pretty flowers though.
It does. Interesting. Well, that is more than... Actually, they are putting a surprising amount of detail here into what the different, like, trees around are. Like, they called one of these... This guy here, right, is called a Urema preta. So that, to me, is probably saying, hey, we're using the scientific names for things.
Yeah. No, like I said, we've seen some things already that are pretty off, but they also put a lot of attention into this, a lot of work actually. So that's nice to see.
Yeah.
Also, Tyrannus asked, was Spain part of the Holy Roman Empire? No. So as an entity, as a legal entity, as a state, the Holy Roman Empire never included Spain. However, shortly after this, the same person is King of Spain and Holy Roman Emperor. That's Charles V. He's the grandson of the guy who is king here right now, Ferdinand. Whose daughter Joanna had married Philip the Fair, the son of the Holy Roman Emperor Maximilian.
Yes.
So Holy Roman Empire and Spain get connected a few years after this, and they remain in an alliance until the Bourbon dynasty takes over in Spain in 1700. So for a good 200 years, almost 200 years, Spain and the Holy Roman Empire are very close allies, but they are not one entity at any point.
Fantastic. All right, I'm just making a bunch of stuff.
Yeah. As for Dr. O'Shadow, I think this is not the right game, not the right time to really get into like the history of anti-Semitism. But obviously, anti-Semitism is never justified, and it's always based on lies and myths. So it doesn't make sense to look for reason in an ideology of hate like that.
Agreed. Alright. So now that I have an axe, I can harvest things from this tree. And with big sticks, we can now we can now make spears, and then throw spears at things instead of throwing our knife at things. Also some chamomile, because, you know,
Is
tea
there
good.
chamomile in the Caribbean? I didn't know about that. I thought it was a pretty European plant, but maybe I'm wrong.
I don't know, we may have to get some quality... Oh, I'm over encumbered. That's awkward. Let me... make some... Let me use up some of my stuff here to... become less over-encumbered. There's that. There's water. A mollusk. And now we're no longer over-encumbered.
Is this just colonialism survival game? That's an interesting question, because to be fair, our character is not necessarily really doing colonialism right now. He may have intended to at some point, but
I probably intended
really...
to do so at some point.
But he's not really in the position to colonize anyone right now.
No. Agreed, because also, you know, a thing where the game actually is doing something slightly interesting, right, it specifies sustainable harvesting, right? So, you can run around and as you harvest things, right, you can either harvest them, in which case it will specify, you know, resources need to be restored. You can't do a whole lot with this right now. Or you can instead walk up and you can cut it down, and if you cut it down, it will not grow back.
Yeah.
And so
that's incredibly relevant in a context of colonialism, actually.
Yeah.
Because something you brought up during our last stream together, and that I've thought about a lot since then, is how colonialism is not just about the domination of people, it's always connected to an overexploitation of resources. And I've seen that so much since you made me aware of it. Like I was recently reading a history of Santa Marta, a province in modern-day Colombia, and it was basically just a long list of, and then they used up this pearl fishing ground and had to move to another, and then they used up this gold mine and had to find another. They really just, within 4 or 5 years, they completely wiped out resource depots.
Of course they did. Classic. Oh, I was way too wrong on that. Right, that's extremely unsurprising to me, because why would they have regard for the world that they are part of and in?
Well, in part, it's because this land is so huge
Yeah.
and promises endless resources. Because back home in Europe, they were actually definitely thinking about sustainability at this point. In exactly this period, the King of Portugal starts having protected forests that may not be cut down for a certain period, because Portugal, being pretty small, starts to get worried whether it will continue to have enough woods for its enormous fleets. It's a sea power and it needs its ships, so it starts protecting forests to make sure this resource is still there in the future. So they start thinking about this, but more in Europe than in the Americas.
Yeah. That's a very, very good clarification and counterpoint. Because yeah, I think that's absolutely right. In Europe, right, going back into the Middle Ages, there's of course huge amounts of work on forest management, and there's a lot of classism involved with that. But hey, there is also some sense of environmental sustainability and not being completely destructive to the world you are around. Also, we don't like peasants and poor people, and therefore we're going to stop them from using our forests. So, let's not give them too much credit here.
Yeah, no, definitely. And like it's also like protecting forests just so you can cut them down later. It's also still not the kind of environmentalism we appreciate today. But it's something. It's thinking about resources and how they may be used up at some point.
Exactly. And I'm pretty sure most foresters will tell you about how that's words about how harvesting forests is actually like super important for long-term safety and health of the ecosystem at large. Because if you're judicious about how you're chopping stuff down, well, then you're able to actually chop down trees that are either too close together or harming each other, harming the ecosystem around it, or are diseased, or have been in some way a problem.
No, that's true. I guess where I remain to be critical is, like I said, they protect the forests to continue building fleets. So even this bit of environmentalism, it's part of like this larger colonial structure.
Yeah.
Having the fleets to continue their seaborne empire.
Agreed. I totally agree with that. There was a case not that long ago where the Danish government or the Danish Secretary of the Environment now, informed the King of Denmark that the trees that were planted in the 18th century for a fleet were ready for harvest in like 5 years ago.
Yeah, I heard that.
Which is just fantastic.
Yeah, it shows a kind of long-term thinking we don't always credit these historical people with.
Yep.
Too bad you can't just punch the crab.
If I got close enough, I could probably punch the crab.
But they run so fast.
They do run like...
crab run so fast.
They run irritatingly fast, so it's easier to just do that. Exactly, Tarlingua. So, right, it is fundamentally, right, the relationship is one of, hey, you see a thing? There's plenty of space here, and there's definitely not people who are managing this and doing things. We can just come in and do whatever we need to. As much as we need to. And stock up. And, the exact thing I'm doing right now, of just decimating the crab population on this island, And because it's on an island, and because I have been stranded here, the game contextualizes this as fine when it's really not. It's really not great, but the game doesn't stop me, so I'm not gonna let my conscience stop me either. Wait. Exactly, right? I mean, that is specifically, right, the US's logic in its westward expansion, Lady Isabel, uh, is that, right, they're not using the land in ways we understand it, therefore they're not using the land at all, therefore we can just go, like, steal the stuff.
That's the English justification.
True.
The English are very concerned with use of land and how that connects to ownership of the land. That is not a concern for the Spanish at all. For the
No.
Spanish, it's much more about religion and being owed obedience because you bring the gift of Christianity to people. So right around this time, that's actually funny to bring this up because there is something between Ponce de Leon's first expedition and his second expedition that changes in how colonialism is done by the Spanish.
Ooh.
And that's the formulation of the requerimiento, which
Uh-huh.
is a text that to ensure that their conquest is justified, because the Spanish do worry about that. They are very, very pious and they're very concerned about whether what they're doing is godly. So the top legal experts of the Spanish crown formulate the so-called requerimiento, which is a text that you are supposed to read out to indigenous populations as you encounter them, preferably with a translator translating it into their language, but very often the conquerors didn't care about that at all, just read it out in Spanish, which didn't help anyone. But yeah, it's basically, hey, we have a right given to us by the Pope to take possession of this land. If you submit peacefully, you will be made equal citizens under our rule. If you oppose us, you will be killed. And that's like, yeah, they, at least in theory, try to give people the chance to submit peacefully. But of course, first of all, these people have never heard of the Pope. They have no idea what's going on. And second of all, they may not even understand what is being said to them if it's not translated. And even then, their best choice is to submit peacefully and still be ruled by a colonial power.
Yep.
Just without suffering war first. So it's still a huge pile of bullshit, but it is, in a way, it's progress on the completely unchecked conquest of the first few decades. And yeah, the requerimiento is formulated just between the two expeditions, and it's included in the royal instructions that are given to Ponce de Leon, that he is supposed to use the requerimiento if he wants his conquest to be legal.
Fair enough. Hey, it's not much, but it's something.
I wouldn't even want to justify it as something. It's really, it more shows that people were concerned about whether all of this business was justified, and they were grasping for ways to justify it. The people had an awareness of that what they were doing is wrong in a way, and they come up with flimsy excuses. But it gives us an insight that they very much had a moral awareness that both people who like to criticize them often overlook in just going, oh yeah, they just thought they could do whatever they want. No, they didn't. They thought they had to justify themselves before God. But it also flies in the face of those conservatives who say it was all justified just because it was a different time and there were different moral values. No, these people were very much concerned that this might actually be a terrible thing that they're doing. So this nuance really needs to inform the way we view this period. And you just got stung by a scorpion.
I sure got stung by a scorpion. Unlucky. I deserved it. I could also hear another weird dog thing somewhere nearby. But I do not know where.
Brilliant point from Agilius. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. The conquest of the Canary Islands absolutely is the model, together with the wars against the Islamic kingdoms in the Iberian Peninsula, the model that Spanish colonialism builds upon. It's all the same themes we later see on a larger scale in the Americas, with religious justification, with the way land is divided, with the way taxes are extracted, and so on. The Canary Islands are a testing ground for all of that. So in that way, Iberian colonialism already begins in the 14th and early 15th centuries, not just with Columbus. Columbus, too, has a prehistory.
Great. Let me add one of these, and then we will ignite one of these, maybe. Never lucky. Never lucky. Severely unlucky. There we go.
I love details like that, though.
I also love details like that. It is very fun and very good that we absolutely suck at building a fire. Let's see. Let me make a couple more tobacco compresses, because that's fine. And we'll just
Nothing harmful ever came of tobacco.
Exactly. Yep. And we'll just use that in order to upgrade the campfire with
scorpion
stone.
sting?
To treat our sunburn.
Oh, alright. Isabel is asking about the captainship system. I'm not quite sure what you mean, because I don't actually know that much about the Portuguese. What exactly is the captainship system you're asking about? If you could put that in the chat, maybe I can answer that question.
We're gonna disassemble that, and then we're going to make a better bed. Well, bed of leaves. I need one more long stick. Dang it. Fine.
So there's no one else on this island at all?
Not that we've run into. I mean, that might change, but
Alright. Just tell me if you want me to talk about uninhabited islands in the Caribbean.
100%. I think that's a great thing to be talking about now while I am finding the cartographer tree.
Great. Because, so obviously there were individual islands in this general area that were always uninhabited because they were maybe just not well suited for human inhabitation. But yeah, we also have in exactly this area in the Bahamas, we did have an indigenous population at the time of Columbus, and at this time it was gone. Why was it gone? Because pretty much all of these people, if they didn't die of illness, they were abducted by the Spanish. Because the Bahamas didn't have a lot of natural resources, the Spanish considered them inutiles, useless islands, And why should valuable laborers live on useless islands? So all of these people were forcibly removed from their homes and brought to other islands to serve as laborers there. And this is also before, again, some progress was made in human rights there. Some people were worried. So over time, the Spanish crown regulates to what degree indigenous people can be used as laborers and can be enslaved. But this is before that. So the inhabitants of the Bahamas, they are treated horribly. They are thoroughly exploited, even worse than indigenous people in later periods. Because yeah, they were there. They could be used as laborers, so they're brought to the Greater Antilles, and their labor is used in mines and in agricultural labor and in construction, and their identity, their cultural identity, is gone with that. We don't hear of them as like a separate identity anymore because they are just so completely decontextualized, and so many of them die that yeah, they disappear, and the Bahamas are left completely uninhabited by that until the English arrive in the early 17th century and start to colonize the Bahamas then. So this is an absolutely horrible, horrifying story, but it explains why an uninhabited island in this region with some traces of indigenous culture left in like, I don't know, paintings or rock carvings or something, is absolutely realistic in an absolutely horrifying way. Okay, we have the question from Isabel on the captaincies now, and that's actually a good question. It works somewhat similarly, but not completely like that. So being the original explorer or conqueror of an area does not automatically give you the right to administer it. So it was all dependent on royal grace. Oh, well, that's what the Columbus family sued over, because the crown insisted they had the sole right to appoint officials in the colonies, and the Columbus family insisted that in the original contract they made with Columbus, they had signed over the right to appoint officials completely to the Columbus family. So it was basically a series of contracts. And people got contracts for captainships, and that's exactly what Ponce de Leon did. He applied for permission to colonize Puerto Rico, and then he applied for permission to colonize Bimini and Florida, and he was granted that. And without that permission, he would have been in a difficult situation. He would have been in exactly the situation that Hernan Cortés in Mexico was in. Hernan Cortés did not have a permission to do the conquests that he did. And this is why he as well goes through a lot of military conflicts with other Spanish officials, actually, and legal battles to justify his position in Mexico. And he gets ultimately removed and replaced by royal officials. So that's how that system worked. And it goes through a series of reforms over the course of the 16th century as they kind of refine their system of administration. I hope that gives you like a rough idea of what's going on with that.
I think that very much gives some sense of, you know,
of how it worked.
how dubious it could get.
Yeah, definitely. Like, I think people fall, into two camps. Either they think it's all dubious, it's just adventurous doing whatever they want, which it was not. But at the same time, other people think it was like a centrally planned effort, that all of this was like done as planned by the Spanish crown or the court in Spain, and that's not true either. It was mostly, yeah, just people on the ground saying, hey, can I go over to that island and torture the people there? And the king says yes or no. So it's definitely adventurers on the ground and doing their thing until the crown interferes. But yeah, it's that middle ground. It's not completely without oversight, but it's also not centrally planned.
Yep. Alright, while I'm trying to start this fire, I do have a couple of thank yous. Looks like the anonymous gifter has been hard at work with 2 gifted subscriptions to Westerly's Witch and to Lady Isabel. Raptorus about an hour ago resubscribed for 2 years of Prime with here's to many more years. Super appreciated. And this dude gifted a tier 1 sub to Agalias. Incredibly appreciated, all of you. It's lovely that you all are doing this. Now, we are getting close to taking our ad break for this stream. I just want to make sure I don't starve to death. Always a question.
Yeah, that would put kind of a damper on the whole colonialism and...
Exactly, it's hard to do colonialism if I'm dying.
Exactly. Never colonize anything on an empty stomach.
Exactly. And never colonize anything without sufficient water. Also, we can drop this busted-ass stone axe. So, we can equip this one. Then we can get rid of that one. And then... we still need to wait for daytime, so... we're going to map out a space, and then we're going to... we're going to map out the space, and then we're going to try and not, fall off this ladder in this cartographer's tree while we are soaking wet. And, presumably, somewhere climbing a very slippery, very crummy ladder.
Yeah, that sounds like a terrible idea in this rain.
Ah, well. We've already done it. I'm sure our map is going to work perfectly, while we are...
Good thing you didn't lose your cartography skills in the amnesia.
Exactly. Even was able to freehand a, different pigment compass rose. Out of charcoal. We got chickens, we got chamomile, we got long sticks over there. We've got some boars, which is run away. We got eucalyptus? Alright, sure. The crabs are all forever. Short-eared dog is apparently what the wolverines are called. Hooray.
Oh. I'm more surprised by the chickens, because this means Europeans have been on this island before, because there are no chickens native to the Americas.
Huh.
Or maybe they came from your ship. Maybe there are also shipwrecked chickens.
Shipwrecked chickens. Yep, sounds about right. That's... Alright. I mean, I feel like at the most generous, that means that someone has been here and introduced chickens.
Yeah, that's possible.
Right, because it doesn't... it's not like, there's no chance that indigenous peoples in the area came in and brought some chickens with them.
From the already colonized territories. Yeah, that's possible. That's possible. Actually, one of the things that the chroniclers start reporting in regards to the Fountain of Youth is that indigenous people from the islands in the Caribbean, from Cuba and the Bahamas, travel to Florida to use the fountain regularly.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Agreed. And now, as we sit out over the fog, we're going to take our first ad break, but as a final note, I think it might not be in baseline reality anymore. The weird Swiss Family Robinson style mesh of wildlife makes me feel like this isn't on Earth. Always a reasonable assumption with survival games, of that something weird has happened, and we're in the... But, I think more frequently, I think it's just we did research on a bunch of things, and then we made some assumptions on a bunch of things. And as it turns out, in a historical setting, I think literally every time devs start making assumptions about the way it was, they're wrong. It's been so consistent that I think we can just safely say that if you're making any assumptions, just assume those assumptions are wrong, and either they're wrong and fine, or they're wrong and a big deal. Anyway, we need to take an ad break because we want to, practice some self-care. Make sure we stand up every hour. So we're going to do that. I will leave you with some lovely questing snails. Ta-da. And yeah, we'll be back in 3 minutes. If you are a subscriber, you do get ad-free viewing experiences. So most everyone in chat enjoy the ad-free viewing experiences and the quest snails. For everyone else, if you've been enjoying this, do drop a follow to support myself and to say thanks to Sacerdos for joining us. But we will both be back in just a couple of minutes, so do not go anywhere. Alright? Alright, welcome back everyone. Hope everyone enjoyed that brief advent of quest snails. In the meantime, I found, oh, it didn't, I don't know if it actually posted in chat, but I think I found what the this, weird dog thing is supposed to be. It is an animal in the weasel family known as the Teira.
Oh. Oh my god, that's adorable.
It's so cute. But it looks like it's mostly farther south.
Yeah, I'm gonna take it.
But that's fine. That's pretty clearly what that's supposed to be. So I think we take those. So I take back the criticism of the famous Floridian Wolverine, in favor of it being an actually semi, at least on the right continent, and in the right region of the continent, tested animal.
Yeah, I mean, it's a fictional island.
Exactly.
It can have unusual wildlife, I feel, from the general region. Like, there's always, cases where this species is in this area, except for this exception where it has, this weird enclave somewhere, so works for me.
Exactly. I'm not going to complain about it. Another case of them doing research. I still perhaps would prefer a coati or an ocelot for more Caribbean animals, but it's fine. Anyway, welcome back everyone. Welcome back to Ludo History. I am Adam, and I am joined by a guest today, Sacerdos, a longtime community member and specialist in the period of today's game. Do you want to introduce yourself for anyone who has just tuned in the last few minutes, Sacerdos?
Oh yeah, sure. I mean, you basically said it. I'm a PhD student in history, specializing in early modern, 16th, 17th century colonialism in the Americas, mostly Spanish colonialism, which is exactly what we're looking at here today, a Spanish expedition to explore and conquer and colonize some islands in the Caribbean, probably somewhere in the Bahamas.
Exactly, because we are playing Survival Fountain of Youth, in which we are a random crew member, probably maybe. We certainly were just in the random crew quarters when we woke up, of Juan Ponce de Leon's expedition to definitely find the Fountain of Youth. Definitely we trust those later sources that are doing character assassination, as we talked about earlier. So that's not actually what we're doing, but within the fiction of the game, we were here to find the Fountain of Youth, and maybe do a little bit of colonialism on the way. So I hope you're all excited for that as we hop back into the game. By excited, I mean distressed, except that survival games and colonialism are genuinely quite fun, and so there's kind of, I don't know, at some point you gotta just accept that. I mean, yes, critique it, because obviously critique it, but, the entire genre of survival games is a little bit, what if we did colonialism?
Yeah.
And honestly, this one, despite being set in, you know, a real world population with... Is that the chicken? I'm gonna sneak up on the chicken.
But I have to say, from the trailer and just from the pitch, I expected this to be honestly a garbage fire. And
Exactly.
it's a lot better than I expected, which is just, it makes me happy. It's not that I like to dunk on stuff. I want to see good representation of the stuff I study in games out there. And I wouldn't say it's necessarily done super well on like the colonialism angle so far, but it has included just some beautiful historical maps and other details, and it has, as you've pointed out, mechanics that make you think about sustainability and things, so it definitely has some stuff going for it, at least so far.
Exactly. Especially in comparison to, you know, what are some of the alternatives that we could have? Yes. I could chop down some nettles and for no benefit. Thank you. Right, we've seen... Never mind. I was about to say we've seen no signs of human habitation, and compared to something like, you know, The Forest, and the recent incredibly popular, incredibly deep dive into that game, this is doing wildly better. And then we find a perfectly squared off column. So, never mind.
Oh yeah, this is definitely supposed to be some kind of Maya or Stela. Shit, I'm not a native speaker.
Yeah,
How do you
Stele.
pronounce that word?
Steely or Stela, I think, are both fine.
Stele. Wonderful. I'll take that.
Yeah.
So Maya Stele would not be like square, it would be like flatter, thinner, you know what I mean? It
Yeah.
would have like a wide side and a small side, but it would usually also, well, some of them are all glyphs, but many of them are just killing critters.
Exactly.
Very sad.
I know. But it was
a lot of
gonna
them
keep
have,
yelling at
like,
me otherwise.
Images, reliefs on them. But yeah, and this is maybe the opportunity to talk about actual connections between the Maya and this
Wait,
region.
never mind. Hold.
Oh my god, it's an Olmec.
It's an Olmec head.
Beautiful.
Actually painted, which I love.
Yeah, it looks great. And the overgrowth, it really looks great. So does it make sense for the Olmec to be here? Not really. Especially in this state of preservation. The Olmecs are a really, really ancient civilization in what today is the state of Veracruz in Mexico, the Gulf Coast region. So their stuff would be like below ground at this point. It would not just be standing there like that. But yeah, they did look at actual Mesoamerican art to design this, and that already makes me happy.
Yeah.
And as I was just going to get into when we discovered that thing, there is some evidence of connections between Mesoamerica and the Caribbean islands. So during his travels, Columbus encountered a trade canoe on like at sea, that from the details he gives about that, most scholars think it was Maya merchants traveling to trade with people like the Taino people in the Antilles. Yeah, then there's like these myths of the Fountain of Youth and all that, that also kind of ties into Mesoamerica, because all of this, what we're looking at here, no Spanish people have actually been to Mexico yet in 1513. So, like with this boat that Columbus encountered, they mostly know about the civilizations there from hearsay, from rumors. And so a lot of the stories about fountains of youth or all women societies, Amazons, that also gets applied to Yucatan. So there's also this ideological connection, the way the Spanish think about Mexico in this time is similar to the way they think about Florida or wherever we are here. So yeah, there might have been some Mesoamericans in the area. It doesn't really make sense for there to be like all this monumental Maya or Olmec art in the Bahamas, because that indicates more than just a few merchants.
Yeah.
That indicates like a city being founded here, and a good 1,000 years before this takes place, because the Maya hieroglyphs and all these monumental stoneworks, that's mostly from the classic period, and that ends in like around 800.
Gotcha.
So the Maya would have been here like hundreds and hundreds of years before you. And it doesn't really make sense for them to get all the way to the Bahamas. That's too far away for like a city foundation or something. But yeah, if you want to be generous, and like so far, actually the game has given me reason to be generous with it. Yeah, it's not unreasonable to expect some Maya people to show up in the Antilles, and not necessarily in the Bahamas, but hey, somewhere around here.
Agreed.
Maybe they were shipwrecked too. Who knows? And then they started building monuments.
Yeah. Maybe not.
Maybe not, no. But it's not like completely out of the world. It's not like if there was like Inca stuff here or something, you know? So it's within the realm of the possible.
Yeah.
Not the likely, not the probable, but possible.
Exactly. And at the very least, we can say that they have actually, looked at some historical art. And that's honestly an improvement.
That's more work than most do, let's be honest.
Yeah.
Let's be completely honest. Yeah, the Olmecs are a bit out there, but they're just the aesthetic is great. I can understand everyone wanting to get some Olmec stuff in there. And yeah, it means meshing cultures and stuff like that. But I get why they do it, it's just amazing art, brilliant art. Yeah, the bar is very low for representation, if we're being honest.
Yeah.
You've got it right, Tyhednus. It's just, I'm happy to see just anything inspired by actual Mesoamerican artwork instead of just like some fantasy culture or something that's just meshing stuff from across the entire continent. And as for what you asked, Dr. Shadow, about the term Mesoamerica, so Mesoamerica is a term that was developed in the early 20th century, specifically as a term to delineate like a culture area like an area where the cultures were closely interconnected with each other. They spoke a lot of different languages. They lived at different times. They had a lot of differences for sure, but they also had common institutions, like pyramidal temples, human sacrifice as an important religious rite, just trade relations with each other. It's an area kind of comparable to, what am I going? Let's say Italy. You know, before Italy became a country, it was definitely a place where the different states that existed there were closely connected to each other and were clearly distinct from those states that were outside that. So that's what the term Mesoamerica is for, and it's actually very useful because there are clear distinctions between what is part of Mesoamerica and what is outside Mesoamerica. Oh no, the scorpion again.
So many
the term
scorpions.
you mentioned, Anahuac, means between the waters. Which waters is kind of debated. Some think it's a reference to certain lakes in the area. Most people think it means between the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans, with, what today is Mexico and Guatemala being kind of this relatively narrow continental strip between the oceans. It's a useful term. It's an indigenous term. It's from Nahuatl, one of the languages there, and there's one thing. It only represents the worldview of one culture there, and it just doesn't mean the same thing as Mesoamerica. It doesn't have that analytical value of modern scholarly analysis of looking at how these cultures are connected. That doesn't mean that the term is bad or useless. It just means it's for different occasions, you know? It describes something a little bit different.
Fantastic. By the way, did you hear the drums just a moment ago? Yeah, they're still going.
Oh. I didn't even notice them. I have the sound relatively low so I can understand you better.
That makes sense. There are drums, so there went any hope of this being just an uninhabited island.
Well, after I did such a long speech about the depopulation of these islands.
I know, right? You tried so hard, and the game was just like, what if drums?
Well, that's actually interesting. That might mean interacting with like an actual indigenous culture here.
Yeah.
And I mean, that offers a lot of opportunity to go very, very unfortunate implications, depending on how it's handled. Like, I would never ever want to design a game that handles like first contact in like this historical context.
That'd be a lot.
That just sounds, yeah, like a huge moral challenge. But it does give us stuff to talk about if it happens.
True. That's a boar. I'm just not going to follow that wild boar. I don't want that. Oh. There's more wild boars over there. Huh. Okay. And, oh, wait. They actually did something... It looks like those boars were, like, fun, exciting colors instead of, you know, anachronistic modern colors. Where did they go? Where did they go? Well, they're gone. Tragic.
So there are wild pigs native to the Americas, peccaries. They didn't live in the islands historically, but again, we apparently have some continental fauna here. And then, of course, the Spanish brought European domesticated pigs, and a lot of them escaped.
Shocking.
They ran rampant on the ecosystems, of course. But yeah, they very quickly became part of the fauna in the Americas and indigenous cultures. Like the Chota in the U.S. Southeast, they re-domesticated these escaped pigs and kind of like bred their own breed of domesticated pigs. So it kind of goes full circle there.
Mm-hmm. Ugh, I need long... How annoying. I need long sticks and I don't know where to find any. Like, because I think I've already harvested those as far as they go. Yeah, I absolutely did. So... Grr. Oh well. Let's see. I am okay on all resources right now, so I am not too worried. I guess I could, like, actually chop down trees in order to, and then try and convert them? How do I go about doing that? Long sticks requires a log. Requires an improved carpentry bench. Never mind. I guess I cannot do that. Okay. More terminology questions. Is there an endonym for Central America that's more appropriate to try and steer away from referring to America outside of the United States? Or outside the context of the United States of America?
I understand the impulse, but you will not really find that kind of terms like for each sub-region. So first of all, in using it only for the USA, you're actually going against what most people, I think, want. Most people I've spoken to from the Americas outside the USA are furious that most people from over here in Europe, when they say American, they mean US. And it really annoys people from any American country that isn't the US.
Yeah, that's
so
fair.
you're actually having it like upside down in that regard. And then each of these terms is connected to a specific culture. And some indigenous activists have promoted the use of these terms, and it makes sense in certain contexts. But again, when you say Abiyala, that's a Kuna term from Panama specifically, speaking about their land. Does it make sense to refer to all of South America, like you say, as Abiyala, when the Kuna don't even live in South America proper, they live in Panama? I think what makes most sense is to mention these terms, to discuss them, but we also kind of have to face the fact that we don't really have an effective replacement for what America covers right now. And I think just limiting America to the US is doing the opposite of helping. It's giving the US more standing as representing all of America, which no one wants really. So I understand where you're coming from with that. You're definitely right to be thinking about this, and it definitely is valuable to discuss these indigenous terms for land or sections of land in the Americas, but there isn't really a term that embraces the whole double continent, because there weren't any people who were traveling throughout the entire double continent and like having an awareness of its full extent back then. And for this dude is asking about letting domesticated animals loose on purpose. So this was not an official policy. The officials, the representatives of the state did not want that. But yeah, on the island that is today Haiti and the Dominican Republic, the island that the Spanish called Hispaniola, Um, some ranchers did just let the cattle run loose because there were no natural predators, and it made no sense to take care of the animals when they could just run wild, take care of themselves, and then you hunt them instead of like butchering them normally. You have to hunt them, but it's relatively little extra effort. So yeah, these people did let cattle run loose on purpose, but it wasn't really government policy. And yeah, Dr. Shadow, on the term Turtle Island, it is a pretty inclusive term, and it is the one I've seen most strongly promoted by indigenous activists. I like it. Um, like I said, it's up for debate. Um, it in to a certain degree, it's also a matter of political realities, I think. But yeah, to answer the initial question, I don't think there are terms that help you for every region of the continent in that way. But yeah, Turtle Island is probably the most popular and inclusive, at least in North America.
Yeah. Okay, sorry. I am just doing regular random management stuff, so do not mind me. Why don't I equip that? That seems obvious. Anyway, thank you, by the way, Math7077 for 31 months of Tier 1. It's good to see you, as always. Let's see if this actually works on the first try. Yeah! By the way, Math, you'll appreciate this, and by appreciate this, I mean the opposite of that. We got shipwrecked and lost all our memory, because that's how memory works. We also have found plot, which is always scary.
Oh, another one of the vessels.
Exactly. I'm leaving this
And
bottle of the living
shiny
water.
pieces of paper.
So that the person who finds it can restore their health if the ship wrecks. Good luck to you, friend. How very kind of you.
No.
How do you know that? What? Oh dear. To anyone who reads
Yeah.
this, I am Juan Ponce de Leon, head of the expedition studying these islands. I barely survived the shipwreck and arrived here on a lifeboat. I'm leaving this note in case someone on my crew also survived. I have spent a few days investigating this island and I'm leaving a rough map and my notes about the island here in this grotto. The island is uninhabited but is full of wild birds and animals, so be careful. I found ruins and other traces of an ancient civilization. This morning I was exploring a bay to the east and heard distant cannon fire. This must be a signal from one of our ships. Sounds like it is close enough to the island. My rescue boat is still intact, so I'll go there immediately. P.S. Just before sailing, I noticed I forgot my spyglass. You can look for it. It is in a conspicuous place with many fireflies. The ancient observatory at the top of the mountain would be a perfect place to do this. Right.
The white symbol above it is visible from almost everywhere.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, if you read these records of the early Spanish explorations of the Caribbean, they keep talking about white symbols floating everywhere that interesting things are. It's a historical fact.
True. Isla de Esperanza, and God, who knew who? I mean, I appreciate the fact that this reddish scribble hand is garbage. This looks like it's more printed, which begs the question of why did you not ink this enough? Like,
I thought it was meant to like be bleeding through from the other side.
I don't think so. I think it's just like the super scuffed, and they just it immediately faded because it is left to right. It is like Sectera. I cannot quite read it. Grr. And I'm not even going to attempt to read this one. This is rough.
But they have looked at historical manuscripts for sure, from judging by the handwriting.
Oh, absolutely. Ponce de Leon marked the approximate location of two water sources on the map: the coastal grotto and the place where he lost his spyglass. Great. There's apparently wolves over here. That's not optimal. But yeah, no, they've clearly looked at historical manuscripts. Go look at all these ligatures. Just so fun. I mean, beautiful.
It's also, now that I realize that this is just one ship out of the expedition being affected, and Ponce de Leon lives and goes on with his journey. So this is, again, it's like not probable that this happened, but it's like in some way possible. It's like not going completely different direction than the historical record, just adding an extra stop to the journey, so to say.
Agreed.
And then going on with journey. And it's actually, like I said, we have very little record of these expeditions. No first-hand testimonies. So we only have really the roughest outline of where the journey went. And we have the fact that Ponce de Leon was very interested in depicting the journey in the best light possible. So ironically, something like this could have happened, and he would just have lied to everyone about it. He would have covered this embarrassing little episode up. So yeah, this can be, with some goodwill, this can be inserted into the historical events.
Yeah, except the Santiago's destruction, right?
Yeah, to be honest, I haven't read up on if this were the actual names of the ships. I haven't checked.
These are the actual names of the ships, and all three of them do make it back. Stupid bugs.
Well.
Oh well.
But still, like, considering how low the bar is, once again.
Exactly.
This works out surprisingly well.
Exactly. I am not offended about that, and they're clearly putting in effort here to stay within the realms of historical something or other.
Also, just in this shot, you can see that the landscapes are actually done quite beautifully.
They are beautiful.
Like, I was a bit unsure in the intro scene because the animation on the ships and such looked a little rough in the intro, but the landscapes here, they are amazing. I love them.
We continue to commit murder. Also, I've broken everything and I have no rocks anymore. That's a problem.
It's so weird that they immediately attack you.
Admittedly, that time I did kind of just run at it. And they do give you plenty of warning, right? It's gonna start yelling at me right now.
Fair.
Right. Unlike some other games.
Yeah, actually, yeah, now I see it.
They actually do a decent job on telegraphing, hey, please don't get close to me, please don't get close to me, please don't get okay, you got close to me.
Yeah, no, I got the wrong impression from the encounter just now. You're
Yeah.
right. No, so they definitely know a thing or two about nature. And they looked at the historical record reasonably well. So, yeah.
Exactly. I'm actually, like, reasonably impressed. Now, I'm also over encumbered, which is a problem, but, you know, that's fine.
It's a workout.
Exactly. Process Scorpion event. How are we supposed to do that? Alright, fine. Fine. Not a torch. I want an axe. Stone axe. There we go. Actually make 2 of them, because I'm gonna go through them too quickly. Okay. Well, oh, we're just back at the Olmec heads. Alright. I think...
But yes, since you just spotted the Olmec heads again,
yeah.
We've talked about the how possible or reasonable that is before, but I feel like pointing out now that Ponce de Leon has further confirmed that these are ancient ruins and there are no living inhabitants of the island. It makes all the more sense to pick a older civilization for the ruins here. It would have been awkward if this had been monuments of a civilization that was still around in this time. But so it's really just they made some kind of colony here in the classic period of 500 or 1,000 years ago, and then this collapsed. They went away, and now there's just ruins here. So they make it work out.
I agree. They're definitely doing, like, some amount of effort, some amount of some amount of thought into who is currently living, or well, who is currently not living here, and how do we make our ancient civilization materially distinct from that current people, which is something. You know, again, more than I expected, which speaks perhaps more to me than to the survival genre, but I think we all sort of didn't expect it.
Yeah, we're pretty jaded at this point, right?
Exactly.
And like the trailer, at least like from the historian's perspective, the trailer did not inspire confidence.
No, quite the opposite. But hey, you know, I am thrilled to be eating my words.
Yeah, no. I think in advance I told you it's too bad I get another game that I have to dunk on this time because I did that the last 2 times.
True.
But well,
Ads? Dr. Shadow, I thought those are supposed to be, like, disabled because I ran the ad break. I am so sorry. I don't get full control over it. Twitch literally doesn't let me actually set my ads, but they were supposed to be disabled for an hour. Boo. Alright, let's make another bed. So, because I'm fully out of stamina. And then continues doing survival game stuff. There's a lot of doing survival game stuff here.
yeah, it looks a bit fiddly, but not necessarily in a bad way. They've definitely put a lot of thought into all of this.
They've definitely, I think, right, I don't love survival games at the best of times. They're not super my genre. But they have at least, you know, paid some attention. And they're also doing interesting things of, like, representing that all of this takes time. Like, that's not something we necessarily always get in these games. Like, sometimes things just sort of happen. And there's not really, like, rhyme or reason to how that works, right? So a kind of classic example is, right, you can build a ton of things, and it will always take 3.5 seconds, no matter what you're building, right? Writing a book in Minecraft takes exactly as much time as making a suit of armor, as making a, like, wooden club, as making a torch. It all takes exactly as much time. And a lot of survival games sort of inherit that. Which is understandable. Like, right? It's understandable because you gotta have gameplay considerations. But this game walks a really interesting balance, right? As players, we are not directly experiencing the sort of moment-to-moment duration of how long things take. But they are actually specifying that different things take different amounts of time, and will react accordingly. An ancient tablet with drawings. The hunting process is depicted here. They sneak up on things. Okay. That's not the lesson I would take from this, but that's fine.
This actually fits nicely with the question that For This Dude was asking about the different kinds of contact between mainland indigenous cultures and those on the islands.
Yeah.
Because that art style compared to what we saw earlier, it's not really Maya.
Agreed.
And I mean, I'm not an art historian or an archaeologist, but it does remind me a little bit more of Mississippian mound builder art that I've seen, but this is not like a precise analysis. It's just like me going off vibes, honestly. But yeah, it definitely does not look like any Mesoamerican art I've seen. So either they're playing with different influences and art styles there, or this is now going more into the fantasy direction. I'm not quite sure. I don't know enough about like Mississippian art to judge that.
I also don't know.
I also don't know whether there were Mississippians visiting the Caribbean islands. This would be archaeological stuff, which I'm not that strong on. I don't think so. I haven't heard of it, but it's not really my area, and I'm not 100% sure. Might be.
Yeah.
I definitely don't think it has Celtic influences. Doesn't feel like that.
The trees kind of sort of a little bit did, but very kind of sort of a little bit.
Yes, ish. Maybe. And yeah, oranges would have to come from Europe here.
Oh yeah, of course they would.
I mean, the fish is so simplistic. I can't really like associate it with a specific art style or something. Sorry.
Yeah. The fish looks like a fish.
Yeah.
Insufficient tool durability. Oh no. I need to make another stone cutter, apparently. That's alright. I have another one there. Stop it. This one. And now I'm over encumbered. Dang it! I was doing so good too. That's fine. We'll do all of this, and then we'll drop this. We'll eat some stuff. We'll have one of them, and then... is there a way to put these in there? No? Okay. Well, now we're good to go. Interesting. It seems like our carrying capacity just in general goes down when we're hungry or thirsty, which is, you know, appreciated. We're also operating right on the edge of everything. Interesting. I don't know running around the island that we're necessarily going to get a whole lot. Like, the island's evidently fairly large. Though. Jeez. Okay. Gotcha. There's a lot of regions here. Wow. Oh, okay, so we've only got 2 done. 2 regions finished right now. And then 3 more that'll come out while the game is in early access. Because it is in early access, so there actually still is a lot of probably work and iteration that's going to be happening before we're done. God, honestly, to some extent, I hope they make it a little bit, you know, more generous with its survival resources. Because I am eternal complaint on just the practicality of survival games, of that you are making and throwing stuff away at speed because everything has no durability. Which, you know, I guess does happen. Right? That you do end up with, you know, hundreds of thousands of flints because flint breaks and you get rid of it and you make a different one. But at the same time,
yeah, no, I get what you mean. I'm kind of getting sick of you making new stone axes at this point.
True. The other big problem I'm having though is just that there's not a lot of stone deposits, and so, right, there's a big chunk of stuff right now that I am actually walled out from making because I have no Chinese palm. Okay, moving on. Hello, Magistressa. You have missed us being pleasantly surprised, question mark? We're gonna go with pleasantly surprised. Some random Olmec heads. But generally, right, actually put quite a lot of effort into including, like, historical maps, historical aesthetics, and to at least some small extent attempting to justify its ancient civilization as being something actually different than contemporary peoples. Though we still get a healthy dose of what are clearly Maya hieroglyphs hanging out.
Yeah, that's so weird. They definitely, like, the Olmec heads, the stele, the hieroglyphs, all of that is taken from mostly the Maya and, well, the Olmec, but the art style of the human figures here just doesn't look like that at all.
It really doesn't, right? I would expect,
of Mesoamerican art.
Yeah, I would expect, you know, firstly, like, elongated heads, right? Different coloration and also, like, elongated heads on at least some people here, because that's, you know, a practice.
Yeah, but just the entire style, the way that the faces are drawn and so on, it's just, it doesn't look Mesoamerican at all.
Wow. We just got one of the last bits of the chronicle here, and that's rough, buddy. When death had taken the last of the highest ones, the great hunt ended. But the families and the loved ones of the highest ones who were gifted longevity faced an even worse fate than death in battle. The day after the end of the hunt, all of the gifted ones were brought to a high cliff above the deep sea on the island of the birds. One by one, the gifted were brought to a cliff and fed the poison of a swamp frog, which immobilized them. And those who drank were thrown paralyzed to the bottom of the sea to drown. At the end of that day, there were no gifted left alive, and their bones rest at the bottom of the sea. The race of immortals was destroyed forever, and only mortals dying of disease remained on the islands. That's rough, buddy.
Yeah, so this is not based on any kind of actual indigenous myth, just to clarify. Like,
Yep.
not even elements of it. This doesn't quite fit together. So this is entirely fictional here, which kind of chafes against the real historical artwork that was included earlier. So now we're ascribing fictional stories and beliefs to people who are represented through recognizable historical art. And that's a little uncomfortable to me.
Yeah, not necessarily a huge fan here. I'm also
Where
Whee!
did they get the bovines
Ow.
from?
Great question. Don't worry about it. Also, I'm glad we can swim. That was, not something I was certain of before I jumped. Buffalo, maybe?
Not
In the
this
Caribbean?
far south. Yeah, not even if we generously include mainland fauna, not this far south.
Exactly. Also, those aren't bison. Those skulls are solidly, cow.
Oh god, buffalo on spring break.
Thank you, Magistress. Solving all of our historicity problems. But yeah, right. Obviously, most of the information around the Fountain of Youth and sort of a meta plot of discovery around this is going to be fictional. But not all fictional narratives are created equal. And I'm with you on being like, the game has thus far been doing a really okay job on, like, suggesting ancient cultures who are distinct from contemporary people, and sort of exploring what that's... Like, exploring that could be, like, really interesting, and considering what those differences are and how you, the player, and you, the character, might respond differently because of that.
I also think that there's just an inherent problem with inventing Native American cultures from whole cloth.
Yeah.
You know, just inserting them into this historical situation where real people have gone through very real suffering, and then just inserting a whole fictional civilization for the aesthetic TM feels off and feels uncomfortable.
Yeah, especially if the Olmec heads we saw are supposed to be sort of related to that fictional, to this fictional ancient immortal question mark culture.
It also, I don't know, if to me it speaks of a kind of unwillingness to address these actual people and their descendants today.
Yeah.
You try to avoid the hard conversation that you kind of have to have if you want to use this setting. Like, you want to use this setting, okay, but then you have to deal with certain issues.
Agreed. Sort of the eternal. It is really the eternal issue. God, I hate weight limits in games. Just for the record, thoroughly not having a good time. But yeah, right. I have written about this with regards to, thinking about enslavement before in other communities, but right, the kind of the same, a similar issue shows up there, where yeah, if this is the story you're telling, you gotta commit to that's the story you're telling, right? If this is the part where that we were kind of worried about, if we are conquistador on Juan Ponce de Leon's expedition, well, Juan Ponce de Leon interacted with real people, and then went to Spain, got more money, and then, colonized and therefore initiated genocide on those people.
Actually, he didn't get to that, because in Florida, pretty much right after landing in Florida the second time, they got killed.
Well,
But he had every intention to, and that's what really counts, I
exactly.
guess. Just for the record.
Just because he failed doesn't mean he wasn't going to.
He did loads of colonialism on Puerto Rico. He didn't get around to doing colonialism in Florida because the indigenous people there took preemptive action regarding that.
Ow.
Also, now birds are attacking you.
I did try and raid their nest.
That's fair. That's fair. That's fair. They have the right.
Exactly. I'm not really mad about the eagles attacking me when I am raiding their nest. That is kind of rude of me.
But yeah, to wrap up on what we were just discussing, I feel like that is something it does have in common with New World, that it tries to do colonialism without the colonialism. Like, we want to colonize something, but without, all the negative associations that colonialism has.
Agreed. So you just make it uninhabited, right? Or inhabited by fictional people, or inhabited by, or only inhabited by something else. And some combination thereof obviously fixes that problem, right? Right?
Yep.
No. Exactly, right? You don't give James Cook any credit for failing to colonize Hawaii either. Just because they were dumb and got wildly overconfident and were like, yeah, we can just do that. Right? It'll be easy. And forgot to give, the people they were attacking any agency, and then got for it.
Mm.
And, we are amused at them getting got by it because they deserved it.
But Ponce de Leon is kind of an interesting figure in that conversation, because we know so little about him, as I emphasized earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Far be it from me to want to defend the colonizer, but we actually don't have specific atrocities that we know he was part of. We know very little about what he was like as a colonial administrator, whether he was kind or brutal. There is not a lot of detail about that for him, unlike many of his contemporaries, where we have specific horror stories to tell about them. So it's kind of interesting. We assume, and I think rightfully so, that he must have been kind of a terrible guy to be a colonizer, but we actually don't have a lot of detail on that for him. We only have, like I said, these outlandish stories that Oviedo tells of his impotence and that kind of thing. and we have Bartolomé de las Casas, the Dominican, who was the great advocate for human rights for indigenous people, and who tried to get the Spanish to stop their colonial project, basically. He is also very critical of Ponce de Leon, but also in very generic terms, just saying, oh yeah, he was so greedy after colonizing one island, he tried to find another to colonize. That's not very specific, unlike many other conquistadores, where I could tell you very specific, horrible, inhumane things they did. With him, it's just like a general vibe of colonizer.
That's extremely fair. And a very...
So Magistrissa brings up a good thing, actually. Bartolomé de las Casas is also not like a straight-out hero, because his position changes a lot over the course of his life. He begins as a conquistador himself. He is part of a conquest campaign on Cuba, and then he turns to religion after seeing the massacres and thinking, this is not right. But what needs to be done, he changes his opinion on that. He develops, because his first idea, as Magistrissa says, is this problem can be solved if we stop employing indigenous people in hard labor. We just replace them with enslaved Africans. Problem solved, because that is justified. But then he realizes this is not a good idea either. He begins to see the humanity of the Africans as well. And the thing there is, he initially believes that all Africans are Muslims, and enslaving Muslims is okay because religious war. And we can shame him for that, but it's still, once he learns they are not all Muslims, he starts making decisions. Distinctions is what I mean, sorry. And yeah, again, we might not completely agree with him. We might still say, hey, Islamophobia is not a good idea, but he does work on his opinions, and he changes and he improves, and he never gets to the point where we could fully endorse him. But it shows the moral capacity of people in that time. It shows that it was fully possible to see through colonial ideology and come to the conclusion that that needs to stop. But most people didn't, and we can judge them for that.
Agreed. Okay. What am I trying to do here? I am trying to find medicine.
That's just what I meant, Magistrissa. Bartolomé de las Casas is one of these examples that shows up this trope of it was a different time, people just had different values. No, people had all kinds of values, and there were people who saw injustice for what it was even back then.
Yep. And thank goodness, right, imagine how depressing it would be if that narrative of, oh, it was just a different time was actually true. God, I feel so bad about everything. It's a much less interesting place.
Oh, now that is...
That is, like, contemporary from Nahuatl codices, right? Like, that's the right style.
Yeah, this... Well, I can't tell if it's Nahua, because the art style of Nahua people and people in Oaxaca, the Mixtecs and Zapotecs, is very similar at the time, due to cultural exchange, but it's definitely from central Mexico somewhere. So this, and now I think about, now I'm just gonna speculate. If I was right that this earlier was something like maybe Mississippian or something, and now, yeah, these are central Mexican glyphs. So if these are two different cultures, maybe the game tries to be like, this is some site of pilgrimage. People from different cultures came and visited here. Maybe that's just speculation, but that would be an interesting way to handle this and to include these different cultural art styles without being entirely inappropriate about it. Maybe they go for this. I'd like that.
Yeah. Of the four tribes, the tribes of the birds was the wisest. They spoke to the winds and read the stars like letters and knew their names. They knew the secrets of storms and the depths of the sea, of tides and currents, rainy seasons, and moon cycles. And they did not keep that knowledge to themselves, but always shared it with others, and for this they earned great respect from every tribe. For there was no safer path in the sea than the one shown by wise men from the tribe of birds. So that actually sounds almost exactly like what they're doing, right? But there are people who lived here, who then interacted with a lot of other people in the region, and so showcase blends and visitations from a bunch of different cultures.
Maybe, yeah, that could be what they're going for. It carries a certain danger of going like secret Ur civilization that all others learned their culture from, which is also an icky trope. But if they handle it, yeah, like I said, like some kind of place of pilgrimage, they all came for that fountain. It makes a certain amount of sense. That could work. I would like that. And yeah, on observatories, just very shortly, because I'm not an archaeologist, nor an astronomer, nor an archaeoastronomer.
Yeah.
So I don't know the details on this, but yeah, the Maya had observatories. They built, like, you can still see a tower at Palenque, an archaeological site in Mexico, that was a Maya observatory. They had quite sophisticated knowledge of how to build a building that lets you optimally observe the stars.
That's
They
super
were
cool.
very, very sophisticated about their astronomy.
That's super duper cool. And hey, we're getting depictions of all of that in... Ow. Getting attacked by scorpions. But
Once you've shaken them off, can I see the place with the glyphs again, or are we too far gone from
no,
that?
we can 100% see that again. I just want to get my torch out so that I can actually, see.
Because from mentioning astronomy just now, I got kind of a thought, because I was just going to mention a cool fact about astronomy. Because of this highly developed astronomy, the Maya calendar was actually more accurate about like how long a year is, because it's like 365 and then a bit of a day. They were more precise about that than contemporary European calendars. And now I'm thinking that maybe some of this stuff is supposed to be calendars, because like the sunstone, the so-called sunstone and such, they did represent the days of the year as a big circle sometimes, and I'm thinking about these circles and whether they might be some kind of calendar.
I think this one is absolutely supposed to be a calendar, right? The influence specifically on the sun from the sunstone, I think, is pretty undeniable right there. Some of these other ones, I think it's perhaps a little bit less certain.
No, was just thinking about the glyphs in the middle of the calendars, because the years are named after the day sign that they begin with. So you have like a reed year or a rabbit year, because it starts with the rabbit day.
Yeah.
In the 20-day cycle. So I was wondering whether those glyphs maybe signaled those signs.
It's entirely possible. And if they don't, explicitly and entirely represent it,
it's still inspired by
exactly.
it. And that's very neat. So game is regaining some faith from me. Oh, now what is that on the head thing?
A Morian.
Oh.
A map with
That's
blurred
Spaniard,
inscriptions in Spanish. The site of some kind of map is marked here. Looks like the Spaniards were already here long before us.
So there were Spanish here, so that could explain some of the strange fauna.
Potentially, yeah. Actually, I think entirely reasonably, yeah.
Well.
Well. They actually thought about it.
Because the Spanish have only been in this region for about 20 years now. Pretty exactly 20 years, actually. 1492, and now it's 1513. So... who got here before? Who knows?
It's a mystery. We are part of Ponce de Leon's crew, Magistressa. They have invented bonus They have invented bonus expeditions to arrive here before us, for the sake of, I think, having skeletons everywhere, primarily. Have an excuse to have sort of your Euro... Really, your Euro aesthetics, technological progression, without...
I wonder, though, So, preparing for this, I looked through the documents on the Ponce de Leon expeditions.
Yeah.
I didn't check whether there were any, like, lost ships in the 20 years before. It might be that this is also inspired by something specific. I haven't looked into that. I really didn't know, because there's so many expeditions moving around here by then that you can't keep them all in your head.
That's fair.
So I didn't know that this might be vaguely based on some other Spanish ship in that vague region, because like I said, the Bahamas area where we probably roughly are, the Spanish have been moving around in there a lot.
Of course.
Because they have been abducting all the people there. So there's definitely been other Spanish here. So I wouldn't say they've like freely invented another expedition. It's not unreasonable for someone else to have come by this island in some way before.
Yeah, that's an entirely fair point. We're not gonna touch the bird. We're not gonna get attacked by the, what they call a dog, even though it's not. What I am trying to do is get back to, my bed safely without falling to my death.
Yeah, I know the experience every night.
Exactly. Ow. And not walking through the plants because I am low on health and less on stamina. But yeah, I mean, that's a fair point. In Spanish annals of this period, do they make an effort to, like, record most shipwrecks? Because, right, in the region I specialize in, shipwrecking is... even one ship going astray is a catastrophe. Lots of ships go astray. So...
I've never looked into it like that, but I would say yes. Yeah, I think so. They keep pretty close track, especially at this point where most of these journeys are funded by the crown.
Sure.
They're like royal expeditions, military expeditions. These aren't private merchant ventures. I mean, actually, so especially like the first journeys, Columbus was mostly privately funded.
Yeah.
The crown only got in when it was clear that most of this was going to be funded by merchants. So the crown wasn't going to take the big risk on Columbus. But in this period, most of this goes more or less via the crown. And there's not a lot of private merchant activity in the Caribbean yet. The settlements are small, and merchants may invest from Spain, but there's not like merchant ships moving around here. So yeah, I'd imagine that the crown keeps a pretty close eye on where ships move around and whether they come back in one piece. So good point, yeah. I'd assume they'd record those shipwrecks.
Okay, that is super helpful to know, because... you know, that to some extent potentially makes it easier to try and do that research, if there's nice centralized sources that are going to be generally keeping track of this. There's lots of regions and universes where that's maybe not so much the case. Okay, can you stop raining now, though? Please? Thank you.
That is the experience I have here in Scotland.
True.
Looking out of the window and just always going, could you please stop raining? Just for today.
I think that right now that's like everyone's shared thing, because notice we are streaming this instead of Tears of the Kingdom, and yet for some reason we're still having way too frequent rain. That makes everyone sad. A universal of games. Alright, but hey, we've actually accomplished a heck of a lot here, honestly. There's only one thing left I want to do in today's stream after I get some, rest and make bandages and heal up. And that is, we heard drums earlier on like the other side of the island. And I'm gonna go hunt those down and see how uninhabited this uninhabited island actually is. Because the game claims it's uninhabited. Ponce de Leon's letter claims it's uninhabited. I'm unpersuaded. So I want to check that out. At the very least, we should find something interesting, even if maybe we don't have great success. Also, luckily, we are finally almost back to our grotto, which means our safety and our things. Notice you haven't made a base? So, on the one hand, not really, because this is just checking it out. This is not going to be a long-term game we come back to until probably it gets a full release. Right, when it hits 1.0, I think we'll probably revisit it. But for the most part, right, this is just seeing what an explicitly historical survival genre or survival game might look like. And the answer is, they've actually... It's currently seems like it's slightly more than superficially historical, but...
It looks decent so far. Honestly, from what I'm used to, I'm actually pretty excited.
Exactly.
I'm getting much more than I expected.
Exactly. I think there's a lot more room, depending on whether and how much they make explicit their implicit stuff. Right, like, they've implied that there's several different cultures coming around here and several different aesthetics. Right, if they make that explicit and say, these are actual, like, groups of people that we know from historical records, suddenly I am, like, way more on board.
Yeah.
If it is continuing to primarily be if it's going to primarily instead Ow. If it's going to instead be that everything is just the meta plot here, I think that gets significantly worse and weirder. So, I will not be a fan of that, but we will see.
Yeah, we don't know. We can't judge what we haven't seen yet.
Exactly.
But so far, I've definitely seen stuff that's way better than I expected. Full stop.
Exactly. So, we're gonna sleep for like 12 hours, and that's fine. Completely exhausted has disappeared, wind chill has disappeared, everything else has disappeared. Fantastic. I still have no wood right now, though, to do stuff. So we'll store that. That has basically rotted, so I need to do something about that. There's that to get some small sticks. Oh, that was incorrect. We'll ignite that. First try? No. Second try? Yes. Can I make this safely? Yes. No. Tragic. I was so close. But hey, we are actually... Oh, I didn't want to drop that. I wanted to drink that. We are actually doing an okay job. That's fine. And then we'll do more crafting stuff, right? Do more of the fiddly things that we've got to do. And then we'll be back on our way. I still hit the wrong button. You'd think I'd figure this out eventually. Okay. So, any plans of showing analysis to the devs? If they come across it, right? I am, of course, it is public, so I'm happy to share it. But I want to let them kind of do their thing, because it's not 100% my place. To be
Yeah,
like,
I think even in the best of cases, it comes across as kind of weird to like at this stage, like early access and stuff, writing a letter. Hey, I've seen your game, and I think you should change these things in your design process coming up. I think that's neither feasible nor really fair to expect from them. So you'll just, trust that our greatest hopes for this will be fulfilled.
exactly. But yeah, right. But this is available, so if they want to engage with it, I'm always happy to have them. I'd be happy to have them on to have them talk about what they're trying to do, and poke at their questions a little bit. But at the time, right, I don't have any great plans for being like, let me write you.
Yeah, I mean, it wouldn't be the first time you get in contact with the makers of a game, but you can't force that.
Exactly. And I don't know. Also, don't know anything about them. Right? I don't have any sort of prior relationship that would help that. So we'll see. We'll see. But yeah, just at the present moment, I don't have any great plans to do that. How's that? Anyway, let's go into the jungle because I'm sure that's going to be totally fine. Also, get a couple more of these because it is crafting, and that's what you got to do. Got to get more leaves, and we're back at the Olmec heads.
I think there's also like in what we just brought up with Dr. Shadow's question, there's I guess a bit of an issue of proportionality. Like if this was like the biggest game of the year and it was already like sending out super bad vibes, there might be more reason to act and try to change that than just a game that so far we actually don't have any really big criticisms. It's mostly this could have bad implications if it goes that way, but we are not far enough in the game to be sure that it actually does go that way. So I don't think there's that trying to like petition them or something would really be proportionate either to the impact the game is probably going to have or the size of the problems we are seeing.
Yeah. Now that being said, it is early access, so the rules are a bit different. But yeah, we'll see. Huh. This is a camp. Why is there a camp? This note has been left by Spaniards who visited the island long before us.
I mean, it can't be that long. Like I said, maximum 20 years.
Maximum 20 years, which luckily fixes one of the problems, which is how does paper last that long? October 30th, 1496. We declare this island the property of the Spanish crown. 2 weeks ago, the captain ordered us to leave the Pinta to explore the island and stock up on water and provisions. This island turned out to be a living hell. Here we experienced the worst days of our comrades. We have stocked up and are leaving this cursed place, but we are, leaving many of our comrades here. Salvador Avila left on the last day for the Southern Well and never returned. Lucas Solero died of a snakebite buried in the camp. Felipe Valdez went into the forest for mushrooms and never returned. Luis Herrero, crushed by a stone in a mountain cave.
So that gives us a lot of detail.
Yeah, it does.
Pinta and the date 1496 means this is during Columbus's second voyage.
Yep.
It absolutely makes sense for these people to be here during that time. No, in the hot, wet weather, the paper would not have lasted 20 years, but who cares?
But yeah, that does.
This is very precise. This inserts itself into a very specific historical moment, and I love that.
Yeah. Actually, a big fan.
They
Actually,
laminate it. I should have thought of that. Classic 15th century lamination techniques.
of course. But yeah, no, this is. I'm actually. Oh, heck, that's another. Ow. I should just avoid the snakes. Especially since that's not my.
That's a lesson for life, yeah.
This is not a minor poisoning snake. Like, that's. I mean, apart from it being a rattler, which is not, right? I'd expect a water moccasin in here, like, or a cottonmouth. In either case, I'd expect very poisonous things. Ow. Very poisonous things other than I keep getting poisoned by scorpions.
By now you should be immune, I think.
I've gotten got by so many scorpions, right?
But yeah, this references the second voyage. Now I wish I had read the sources for the second voyage, because the second voyage is also when Ponce de Leon first comes to the Caribbean.
Oh, huh. Oh, huh.
So this is fun. This has a lot of historical detail. I'm starting to really get into it.
I'm kind of a fan, right? And I'm loving, right, the acknowledgement that long before us is not, oh yes, there were secretly ancient things. No, it is set in a specific historical moment, and a historical moment that at least potentially, and really, that was fall damage. Game, okay, maybe tweak your fall damage a bit, because that's ridiculous. I can drop off of that, and I'm flimsy as all hell. Oh, birds. Not getting got by the birds. But wow, I'm also loving, right, the geography is innately a little bit silly, right, just because you need some drama.
Yeah.
But also, they've clearly, like, thought out a little bit of, like, what does a path up to the observatory up there actually look like? How do you actually make that? Right, as you can see that there's a path up with semi-natural steps, and you can see the calendar all the way up there. Oh, that's what Ponce de Leon mentioned for the, like, white marking. It wasn't the weird glowy thing, it was the calendar.
Oh. Yeah, I thought this was just kind of a, like, little Easter egg or something. Yeah, we're acknowledging that the game has, like, pop-up
That's a wolf. God dang it.
things or something. I don't think there were ever wolves on any of the Caribbean islands.
There are not, in fact, not wolves on any of the Caribbean islands. You just don't need that. But you can hear the awoo. It's clearly canid. Oh, climbing? Nah, so close. Ow. Eastern Diamondback is found in the Florida Keys, so putting it in the Bahamas isn't that weird. Alright, well, fair enough. I guess if you want that to be, that's fine. Yeah. I'd still prefer a much more venomous snake. But that's fair. Alright, so it's kind of starting to sound like the drums might actually just be ambient. Might just be part of like the ambient soundtrack notes.
Yeah.
Which is sad, but also, you know... Turtle. I'm sorry, what was I saying? I got distracted by a turtle.
Yeah, no, you should kill it.
Turtle. Oh, he's zooming!
Oh no, it's a land turtle.
He's zooming!
Tortoise.
Look at him go! Look at him go!
This looks almost like a Galapagos turtle, tortoise, whatever.
I feel bad about this, but...
Yeah, this is very sad.
Ah. But I need food, so... Really? Two raw meat spoils? Fine. No. You monster. Yeah, that's fair. I deserved it. Again, we've already said, we're not... The game does not provide any restrictions. Being a survival game, the game, broadly speaking, does not provide any resistance to us being an absolute monster. And if the game doesn't, I see no reason to let my conscience do so. I might, however, get punished for that by, you know, dying. But, yeah, we'll see. I also have no idea where I am at this point. Wow, I am way out in the middle of nowhere. Okay. That's fair. Is this, like, drinkable water? I assume not.
Oh.
That's a wolf. I have, like, 1 HP. So I'm just gonna run away. All the way out to the coast here. And then we'll figure it out from there. That is a poor excuse. Much like how the Spanish tried to cover their asses. See? You've understood the experience. There are no good excuses. There is just being a monster. Well, I have literally 1 HP. That's exciting. Oh well, what do you think the odds are there are sharks in this water?
I think, like, ecologically there should be.
Well, never punished so far. Although I don't know that that means all that much. We made it across 1 body of water without dying, therefore there are no sharks, right? Right?
I'd assume so.
Yeah. Anyway, we are almost done. We've got another definitely ancient site to look at. There's also a mosquito. Ugh. Ugh. I did just flinch and have to, like, cover my ear because there was a mosquito in my right ear. And that was not a fun time. Good sound design, but not fun. Well,
Yeah.
hey, you're a jerk. Hey, you're still a jerk. Wow, 5 HP in the dream. We have found... Oh. The spot where all the fragments go. And more rope? Yeah. So we go wall carving. I've got 3 of the 5. Obsidian shard.
Oh.
A feather. Exciting. Boo.
But I guess makes sense. This looks like some kind of ritual space or something, so makes sense that there's an obsidian blade in there.
Exactly. I would 100% agree that this is an ritual space, and specifically I'd observe that it's very likely a sacrifice people here and their blood pours down into here space.
Possible.
Ooh. I mean, we do have...
Yeah, now that is Codex style. That is Codex style art.
Yeah. So, just make sure we're on the same page. When you say Codex style, you mean...
Central Mexican.
Exactly. Central Mexican in style of Nahua codices produced after the Spanish...
No. Around the time of the conquest, and like we have so-called Codex style pottery that is pre-conquest. That's the same art style. So this style would be not European influenced yet.
Gotcha. Exciting.
It starts to change the further along we get in the 16th century. But this art style on there, this would be like at the time of the conquest or before.
A bird attacked me.
This time you aren't even at a nest, right?
Exactly.
So it's really just a jerk bird.
It's just that the birds are jerks.
Or it really is a friend of the turtle.
I mean, that's always a risk. I was very rude to that turtle. Oh. Okay, so we did find, some sort of sacrificial space.
Where we can do a puzzle.
Where we can locate the 5 pieces. There's piece 3. I've now found 3 of the 5 pieces. Ta-da! Oh, so this is not blood, that's life water, and,
That's the same
blood.
thing, though.
Blood.
Like, blood is life water.
That's...
in indigenous cosmology, and that's kind of interesting, because like, for example, you have this one very famous Codex painting where you have like a stylized picture of the world with the 4 ends of the world, each marked by a tree. And you have a sacrificial scene in the middle, and you have like streams of water or blood going out from the sacrifice to the ends of the earth, kind of like representing how the whole earth is sustained by these rituals.
Exciting. I love that.
So water cycle imagery here is kind of perfect. And now we know where the skulls, the bovine skulls come from, if there's been Spanish people here before.
This is true. It does answer that question quite nicely. Yeah, that ties it all so together, but that's clearly cow. Also, there's the nest that the birds were being jerks to me about. Wasn't even close to it.
Maybe they're directly connecting the Fountain of Youth to blood sacrifice. That's speculation, but it would be an interesting idea.
It would be super interesting. That being said, right, we do know that, right, the inside the vessels, right, from the fountain is just... Give me back my axe. You attacked me first, I'm sorry. Also, let's just equip my knife, because my knife is getting damaged anyway, so I may as well use it.
Yeah, we have water in the container, so we're not necessarily like expecting a fountain of blood. I was just like pointing out the symbolism and the way that blood is talked about in Mesoamerican cultures, to point out like the potential parallels there.
Yeah.
Like the word for blood in Nahuatl is Jalchi. Shit. This language is really hard for us to learn. Jalchu Tatl, which means jade water, or more liberally translated, like precious water. So it's
Huh.
it's likened to life-giving water, but also likened to gemstones, precious things.
So, like jade, as in the material that these containers are made out of? Like a green stone for the living water.
That's an interesting. I didn't even consider that because that would be a huge piece of jade.
That's
but
an enormous piece of jade, but when has that stopped video games?
It's an interesting suggestion, and Dr. Shadow, the rationales for human sacrifice are, like I said, it sustains the whole world. The whole world is kind of like an expression of divine essence, and to sustain that divine essence that is manifested in things like the sun and the earth and the rain, you have to give back to those divinities in the form of blood. And there are myths like the earth was made from a giant monster that was killed by the gods, and it's not entirely dead. It kind of like rests uneasily. So to keep the monster sustained and peaceful, you have to feed it with blood. And the sun moving across the sky and fighting off like the forces of darkness, that's hard work. So you need to feed the sun. So once again, you have to give blood. That's the kind of myths with which this central religious ritual is explained among the Nahua, who we usually call Aztecs.
Amazing. Good. I'm actually kind of really impressed with this game.
Yeah, it's gone from, oh my god, this will be cringe as hell, to I'm really appreciating some of the choices here. I see a lot of potential. It can still go wrong.
Oh yeah.
But to Dr. Shadow asks, is Aztec an exonym? Absolutely. Aztec is a term that was made up in the 19th century. For these people, there isn't really one term for all of the people it describes. Most people use Nahua just as an equivalent to Nahuatl, the language that they spoke. It's all the people who speak the Nahuatl language, but these speakers of Nahuatl never saw themselves as one single people. They always saw themselves as Mexica or Acolua or Tlaxcalteca, so different tribes or nations within this greater language group, but they also recognized that they were a community different from those who did not speak Nahuatl. So there are a lot of derogatory terms for people who do not speak Nahuatl in the Nahuatl language. So there is a kind of consciousness of them being a community, but there is not a single word. I think Nahua is the best term because it's connected to the language, but a lot of people still use Aztec. I'm not really fond of the word because it really, it's a 19th century term, and it tries to derive itself from Aztlan, which is a place that some of these people say they originally come from. It's like a mythical primordial home, but not all of these people share this myth. So applying it to all of them is kind of awkward. And then there's also like the fact that you have like the Aztec Empire, but this empire never controlled all of the people who spoke Nahuatl, and it also controlled a lot of people who did not speak Nahuatl. So again, the term isn't really representative. So I'm not fond of the term Aztec, but I reference it so people know what I'm talking about, because I know it's the best known term for all of this.
That makes sense. I'm gonna see if I can't get myself killed by a shark, and then I think we're coming up on the end of our time with this game, because there is, I could be spending very many hours here, just trying to find some dang long sticks. So instead, we're gonna go for a swim, and we're gonna see if we can jump scare ourselves to death. And
By finding a shark.
exactly.
I'll try to wrap up some of the last questions in the chat in the meantime. Smaller blood-giving ceremonies, yeah, we've mostly referenced human sacrifice so far, and it's what the Spanish mostly emphasize because it's kind of like, again, it helps them justify the conquest. These people are horrible and inhumane, and they need to be stopped because they practice human sacrifice. But even just from like a practical point of view, it's not sustainable to have like human sacrifices every single day. This is not a daily occurrence or anything. This is for the biggest ceremonies, like usually like once a month or so, that you have some human sacrifices. And otherwise, yeah, you have smaller rituals of giving blood. Those differ from culture to culture. The Nawa, as someone in the chat has also mentioned, they will in like even little domestic rituals, not just the elites, they will prick themselves with cactus spines to offer up little bits of blood. The classic period Maya had more intense rituals there. The royalty, the kings and queens, would publicly cut like a little slit into their tongue and or their genitals, and then pull a rope with knots in it through that slit to increase bleeding. So that would be a very intense practice of personal bloodletting. But yeah, that all of that was way more every day than killing a whole ass human being. They definitely did that, and they definitely didn't kill just a few people. They did have larger ceremonies where many were killed. But like I said, about once a month or so, and not every day, hundreds or thousands, like some of the more exaggerated accounts claim. That's just not physically possible without completely depopulating the region. And also, like some of these claims, really, you would have to kill people like every few seconds just to get to those high numbers. No one can do that kind of work. Killing people and cutting their hearts out is hard work.
Yeah.
Are there any other exonyms you should be aware of? I mean, there's thousands of indigenous peoples across the Americas, and there's loads of names for every single group, so I don't even know where to start, to be honest. There's loads of exonyms for everyone, and for many peoples we don't even know, even though we don't know, or they really didn't have a clear endonym. But yeah, I started at the very beginning of the stream. I said the conquerors will mostly just say it's Indians, it's Indios.
Yeah.
They will rarely specify. So for those groups that kind of like it's horrible, but who died out before anyone could have a closer look, make a more detailed account, we really don't know what they were called because they're just Indios in that conqueror's account, and then they all die and no one can ask them anymore. So that is the sad reality for a lot of groups, especially in Central America.
Yeah, and unfortunately, I think also very, very much the case around here, because, right, even the like handful of texts we've seen, and it's something that the game is actually representing, right, the small handful of texts we've found so far don't actually specify. They use like a weird like pseudonym of the gifted ones, the immortal people, and not actually giving us anything that we could latch onto as scholars looking at this.
We also haven't really discussed like why we can understand these texts.
Don't worry about it.
Like what language are they in? But that's kind of a common thing. I have to think of the road to El Dorado here. There are some parallels. I feel just instead of gold, we're looking for eternal youth.
Yeah.
And you have the same thing there. People just speak the
understand
same
each other.
language, and
Exactly.
it's never questioned.
Exactly. I guess it could imply that we are one of the quote-unquote scientists. Uh-huh. Definitely. Oh, there are sharks. Hi, shark. That explains why I took 27 damage randomly. Well, rest in peace, me.
I thought it was the jellyfish.
I thought it was the jellyfish too, but no, it was a shark. See?
Cool.
Hi, shark. That's what I figured. I figured if anywhere was going to have a shark, it was going to be the shipwreck. Because, of course.
Yeah, tasty, tasty drowned people.
Tasty, tasty
Feeds.
ground people. Oh, I can't stand on that. Let's just go this way. I'd hope that I don't die. Because if I run out of stamina, I assume I'm just going to die. And that would be fine. It's fine. But yeah, I guess it could assume that we are one of these scientists that our job is to translate, be the person who knows this language and is able to translate it for all of the ancient writing, which is awfully convenient, but whatever. Better than the alternative. Right? There comes a point where you've gotta be able to actually translate it, and they're at least acknowledging that there are different languages. Like, when we transcribe things in our logbook, I've been noticing that there is Spanish language writing next to our illustration of the thing. Right? So, they have been, like, acknowledging that there is something resembling linguistic diversity, though they've not really dug in as much as I hope they do into who are all these different peoples that we are running into.
Maybe some of that will come later. Who knows?
I hope it does. I think that's a place.
As we uncover the whole story of this civilization, which seems to be part of the plot, maybe we will hear more about who these people were and where they came from. But yeah, in general, there's definitely things that require suspension of disbelief here, but a lot of attention to detail.
Exactly.
They really thought about their stuff, and we may not agree with every decision, but it's well made.
And as it is, and right, since it is in early access, I think there is lots of time here for lots of extra information to be found, right? And a lot of extra things to be added to really dig into that diversity. But like for a genre that by and large doesn't relies as right, there was a fabulous video essay that was 3 hours long that came out last week. That explored survival games and like their reliance on, to some extent, mystery as a narrative. This seems like, in a lot of ways, it's narratively interesting and trying to do interesting things with its explicitly historical setting. And I like that. I think there's a lot of promise here, and so I think we'll probably let this one sit and simmer for a while. But as it gets its full release and they try and finish it, this may be one worth actually coming back to, which is quite exciting.
And not what I expected, to be honest.
True. Anyway, thank you all, everyone in chat who hung out and enjoyed us. They actually do have a name to this dude. We can call the people on the fountain culture. It looks like they're actually call themselves this island is the bird culture. Let's see if I've got something in the journal there on that. Where is it? Ancient observatory, ancient hunting. Where was it? The tribe of birds is who that was listed as for this particular island, which is, something, right? It may not map into a known historical people, but it's something, and I hope we'll get... Basically, I just hope we'll get some known historical people, indigenous peoples here to sort of flesh out this relationship and show that they are caring not only about the material culture of 16th century Spanish conquistadors, but also really thinking about where are their indigenous aesthetics coming from, and making it not just superficial and randomly stealing things that look nice, but actually having a fleshed out idea of how these fit into the broader culture space of sort of South Central North America. So yeah, thank you everyone in chat who came and joined us for this, whether you just tuned in recently or were here the whole time. And of course, thank you, Sacerdos, so much for coming and joining, providing all of your fabulous insight into our time with this game.
Thank you for having me. It was great fun. I'm looking forward to the full release, if I'm honest.
So am I, which is really, really exciting. And so big shout outs to the devs for putting enough in here to make us excited, and putting enough in here to really let us sink our teeth into it in a useful way. If you did enjoy the stream, though, do make sure you follow and consider supporting the stream by doing what all the lovely people in chat have done throughout, and subscribing, or heading over to patreon.com/LeoHistory and supporting us over there for as little as $2 a month. We'll be back on Tuesday with more Hollow Knight and our historical tour, so some meta discussion of historical methods and applying those to another fantastic game. So I hope you all will join us then. But yeah, that does it for us, so thank you for tuning in. Until next time we see you, I hope you have a good night. Okay? Bye-bye!
Bye.